I used to believe that the Earth is a spinning sphere, but it's no longer possible to go on believing that. On the 8th of February 2018, the company Exalt claimed a new distance record for microwave transmission. Microwave transmission is always line of sight. The previous record was 225 kilometers. Their present claim is 235 kilometers, which is 146 miles. Their transmission is from a 50-foot high tower on a beach in Cyprus over the sea to a similar tower on a beach in Lebanon. You will notice that the previous record was only 5 miles less. It's easy to confirm that the company Exalt exists and is offering its equipment for sale. However, their achievement completely destroys the possibility of the Earth being a sphere, in spite of what we've been told all of our lives. The calculation for the curvature of a 25,000 mile circumference sphere can be accomplished easily on the web, or slightly less easily using paper and a pencil. The resulting calculations cause a really major problem. In the case of the Exalt record transmission, you can see it shown graphically like this. There's the originating site, and because of the curvature of the Earth, the straight line microwave transmission has to continue out along this line. The antenna, which is on the beach at the receiving end, will be 2.38 miles below the line of sight. That is 12,575 feet below the line of sight. So there's no way that the receiving station could see the transmitting station if the globe is curved and the Earth is a globe. So I think we can take it quite definitely that the Earth is not a globe. Remember that microwave transmissions are always in a straight line. So the Exalt microwave transmission is physically impossible if the Earth is a spherical globe. This is further shown by aircraft flight paths. Taking examples shown in the information-packed video shown on the web with this link, we have these particular flights. Flight from Johannesburg into Perth should be a straightforward 11-hour flight as shown here. The flight would be curved along a simple path on the globe, but they actually divert to either Malaysia, Hong Kong or Dubai for refueling, which is totally mad on a globe Earth. It's realistic, however, if the Earth is flat, because the flight directions are sensible and constant. Then consider the flight from Johannesburg to Santiago. Should take about 12 hours. It diverts for refueling and goes to Senegal, taking 19 hours. If the Earth were a globe, that would be completely mad. But if the globe happens to be flat, then it makes perfect sense, because the flight path is then a straight line. Then consider the flight from Santiago to Sydney. It diverts to Los Angeles, increasing the expected flight time of 15 hours to 27 hours. Again, on a globe Earth, that's completely mad. It's not mad if the Earth is flat, because the direct flight passes over Los Angeles anyway. Moving on, there are of course many other things that show that the Earth is not a globe. For example, take the Suez Canal. Suez Canal is 100 miles long and joins the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. It has no locks, and no allowance for the supposed curvature of the Earth was made during its construction. It is 100 miles of flat waterway. If the Earth were a globe, then the middle of the canal would be 1,666 feet higher than either end, and instead of a canal there would be a dry mountain in the way. This shows that the Earth is definitely not a globe. Then there's the matter of a ship sailing away from the land and steering straight out into an ocean. It appears that the ship goes down over a curved ocean, disappearing gradually until only the top of the structure, the superstructure, is seen. That looks convincing until you look at the ship through a telescope. When you do that, you find that you can see all of the ship again, right down to the water level. What looks like the ship moving down a curved water surface may be highly misleading, and the reality is likely to be poor visibility and considerable distance, making it impossible to see the details as they really are, which is the ship sailing away on a flat water surface. Personally, I think that we need to be very careful when considering visual observations which presume that light travels in straight lines, as that's not always the case. For example, it has been shown that light does not always travel in straight lines. Parallel to the ground, it is probable that rays of light are straight, but they are definitely not always straight when angled upwards. Some surveyors admit that they are unable to determine the heights of mountains with any degree of precision, and their measurements may be off by as much as 10%. Joseph Cater tested that fact using an altimeter, which was set to 0 at sea level, and then driven to the top of a mountain at 42.5 degrees north latitude. The mountain was supposed to have an elevation of 9,269 feet. The altimeter reading agreed closely with the established elevations of towns along the route, elevations which were from 1,000 to 4,000 feet. However, at the top of the mountain, the reading was only 8,800 feet. The fact that the altimeter was accurate at all places except the top of the mountain, whose official height was estimated by triangulation, shows that the light rays at the top of a mountain are not straight. Admittedly, the rays of light were bent away from the Earth and not towards it, but the key point is that light does not always travel in straight lines. So perhaps using a telescope to see a ship which appears to have passed over a horizon is not reliable, as the rays of light might have been curved parallel to the surface of the Earth. Personally, I think that's most unlikely, but how can anyone test if those light rays are curved or not? As another example, consider the London to Liverpool railway line. It passes through Birmingham, about halfway along the route. The journey is about 180 miles long, and if the Earth were a globe, then the curvature of the Earth would mean that Birmingham would be some 5,400 feet higher than either London or Liverpool. That, of course, is ridiculous. I seriously doubt that a train could manage the journey if that were the case. Common sense tells you immediately that there is no such curvature, and that shows clearly that the Earth is not a globe, as described by the people who are lying to us. Then we have the account published in the 1931 edition of the Popular Science magazine, which recounts the experiences of a scientist who rose 10 miles into the air in an airtight sphere, and who reported that he could see the whole Earth and that it was flat with raised edges. There is, of course, the problem that he might be lying, but it does clear up the Bible mention of the 4 corners of the Earth, which is not really possible if the Earth is a sphere. But anyway, moving on, we've been told that the Earth is a sphere of some 25,000 miles in circumference at the equator. It appears that the notion of a spherical Earth did not occur until the 15th century, and we have the problem that we do not have a single photograph of Earth taken from space. There is, of course, no point in mentioning the ridiculously faked supposed moon landing in 1969 by the Americans. Then we have the famous experiment where a swinging pendulum is supposed to show the Earth's rotation as time goes by. However, we have a problem with this, as the pendulum sometimes indicates that the Earth is rotating in the opposite direction to yesterday's rotation. So we have to admit that the experiment is actually useless, as it does not show anything reliable. Then there is the Moon, which is supposed to reflect sunlight and be eclipsed by the Earth's shadow falling on the Moon. No, the Moon does not reflect sunlight, as moonlight is a completely different type of light, nor is it eclipsed by the Earth's shadow, as you can see some of the eclipses when both the Sun and the Moon are visible at the same time, and that is physically impossible with the explanation given. The Moon has its own light. If it were reflected sunlight onto a spherical Earth, then you would have, or rather onto a spherical Moon, you then would have just a single bright spot, because the light would be radiated in all different directions due to the curvature of the spherical Moon. But that is not the case. The moonlight is quite different. It's cold, and the Moon always is lit up by its own light. In some instances, stars can actually be seen through what's supposedly a spherical solid Moon. Then consider the fact that if the Earth were a globe and rotating around the Sun, then day and night would swap positions twice per year. If we were on a spinning globe, that is. At one time of the year here, this side of the Earth would have daylight at noon. When it moved round to here, the daylight would be at the bottom of the globe. 6 months later, when it's round to the far side of the orbit, the opposite side of the globe would have daylight, and the part that we started off with would now be experiencing night. So after 6 months of orbit, the day and night on Earth would have swapped round by 12 hours. Do you see a problem with this? When it moves round in a circular orbit, the time of noon daylight would change every 6 months. It doesn't happen. So we can be fairly sure that the Earth is not a sphere. Then we have the confession of Robert Simon of NASA, who freely admits to having composed the well-known Earth image, which has been touted ever since, in spite of the magically changing size of America. He admits freely it is photoshopped, but it has to be. That's because there are no photographs. The results that he's produced over the years are enormously different, ridiculously so. This is the outline of North America in 2012, and this is the outline of North America in 2013. And if you think those are both the same size, I think you need your eyes tested. More obvious even so is the copying of imaginary cloud cover over and over again, with various sections being repeated and photoshopped from one position into another to create what's supposedly a realistic looking cloud cover. Then we have the problem of the map projection, which has been shown and is shown on the official logos of various organizations, including the United Nations and so on. This is a map which states quite categorically that it is accurate and true in all respects. It was produced a very long time ago, but if this map is true, which I believe it is, then the South Pole is a continuous body of land which goes round the edge of a flat Earth. Now that's not a popular thing with the people who run the Earth. So can we say anything about that supposition? And the answer is yes, we can, because before there was a lot of fuss about people no longer being allowed to go to the South Pole, various explorers such as Cook and others have tried circumnavigating the South Pole. When they tried to do that, it took them 3 or 4 years, and they found that they sailed something like 60,000 miles along this particular ice wall, trying to circumnavigate the South Pole, and they confirmed there's no break anywhere in it. If the Earth were a globe, then at just 80 degrees south, the circumference of the Earth would be about 12,409 miles, and it would be physically impossible to sail continuously 60,000 miles along a continuous coastline near that latitude. If the Earth were a globe, and the Sun were a very large body some 93,000 miles away, then the North Pole and the South Pole would receive the same amount of sunlight and heat. That's not the case. Near the North Pole, the summer and winter are like this. The winter is frozen and cold. The summer is cold but reasonable. You can see that there are plants that grow at the North Pole in summer, and there are animals at the North Pole. While near the South Pole it's just too cold for plants at any time of the year. In fact, the same distance south of the equator that the United Kingdom is north of the equator, this is what it's like in summer in the south. Not exactly a place that you necessarily would want to live. In the UK in summer there are thousands of plants, crops, fruits and so on, and near the North Pole itself there are animals which live quite happily at the North Pole. That is a major contrast to the southern landmass, which never gets warm enough to melt the ice. The average temperature at the southern landmass is minus 50 degrees centigrade, while it is minus 15 degrees centigrade at the North Pole in summer. So without taking the details any further, you can see clearly, using just common sense, that the Earth is not a spinning planet globe. So why do NASA and others promote these silly notions? There are various reasons. They want an excuse to take for themselves large amounts of money which they don't spend on space rockets, orbiting space station, space shuttles and the like. They also want you to believe all of their lies, no matter how silly those lies are. They want you to feel insignificant, just a tiny part of a tiny planet in an insignificant part of an amazingly large universe. They want you to serve them and be their obedient slave all through your life. Aren't you delighted that these charming people run the world?